Hey guys! So today we are answering a subscriber question, and it's a good one. This question in question is, Frederick, can you explain the startup mindset? So let's get into it. Well, the startup mindset, you may or may not have heard that we are in a little bit of a gold rush era right now with startups in IT. Pretty much every single startup that new founded company that you will find out there on the internet, well, not on the internet necessarily, but a lot of the startups these days are IT companies, and it's hopefully fairly straightforward to know why that is. IT represents a big market. It has potential for innovations coming out the ears, and the initial investment for young entrepreneurs or like people who just start out is fairly low. Usually you don't have to buy any type of inventory. You don't need a lot of infrastructure or like material. Like you don't have to have a big upfront investment in general. I mean, the smallest startup that you can probably start is that, hey, there's one person with a laptop, right? Now, the thing with small companies and startups and like this sort of thing is that we have gotten to this point in IT where there is a bit of a switch in the way that this industry works, or rather it's one of these few industries where let's call it just a very special environment, because for a lot of companies this has started to become more of a reality. Google and like the really big high profile IT companies have been part of like kind of pushing this idea, but they've also been the people who kind of embraced it very early on. And that is the value of employer branding and the fact that the startup mentality is very tied into creating the sensation of belonging between a group of people. Let me explain. You see, traditionally a company was driven from one single perspective, and that was that you have a pyramid type of structure where you have basically people who, I mean, when the company is really, really small, you start out with this almost startup kind of feel. But as the company grows, you come into this pyramid structure where more and more people, I mean, if in a really, really, really large corporation, people at the bottom usually don't give a shit about the company. There's no, it's just a job. I mean, they will tell you something different, of course, in the job interview. I mean, I think it's super cute when a 19-year-old girl or boy goes into McDonald's and needs to motivate why the fuck they're working there. I mean, honestly, why do you think they're working there? Is it because they believe that this is their future, or is it because they need somewhere to make make some extra money? I think it's like, why do you want to work in the cash register at McDonald's? Well, I think that McDonald's is, I'm not going to bash talk McDonald's, it's just like in the service industry in general, it's kind of a weird thing that a lot of companies do. And for some reason, people feel that need. But in the startup world, this is actually a big thing. Basically, the mindset of the startup people is that they've realized that a lot of the people, especially in programming, the best programmers around are more and more people, like especially the millennials, are more interested in working in a good office culture and having a nice place to work and having bragging rights, if you will, as opposed to working for just money alone. And what's interesting is that you would think, as perhaps a conservative business person, that that's just, what the hell is that? I mean, these are just kids. They kind of need to start growing up, right? I mean, who the hell, what company would jump through all the hoops to create like a kind of like almost a playground type of vibe around their company, and then pay people on top of that and competitive salary? That's just bullshit. Why would you do that? I mean, they should just be happy that they have a job, right? But you're wrong. And you're wrong for one very painful reason, and that is that there are less of them than you need. And that's the thing, that's the why the startup mentality is gaining this sort of traction. Because if you don't get any developers. You see, developers in today's IT are in such high demand. I'm talking about the good ones now. I'm not talking about people who know some basic code. I'm talking about the people who make or break a company. These people are so rare that they can actually may have certain expectations. I mean, it is very common that startups try to basically lure people in with everything from like, a lot of perks, like anything from free breakfast to personal trainers to gym memberships to, you know, free alcohol, free drinks, like all. You would not believe the sort of perks that some companies offer just to recruit people. And they have to. There's nothing that they can't really not do it, because if they don't do this sort of thing, they can just forget about getting anybody of value to come into the company. And good developers can, like, they make or break your entire company. Trust me on this. They are, I mean, Google knows this better than anybody. How do you think that they got to the sort of position that they have? Because they understand the value of having high quality people within an organization. It is vital. You think that it's, I mean, the cost that you pay for having these perks is nothing in comparison to the value if you get some really good people, like what they're going to produce. And that is the start, like that's the company perspective on the startup mentality. I mean, even conservative organizations such as banks these days have started realizing that shit, like they can't get developers, or rather they hire consultants for a ludicrous amount of money because nobody else wants to work with them. And even they have started, I've read a few articles where like they are trying to overhaul their offices and their culture to get anybody in the age group of 20 to 30 to actually want to work for them. Because they can't find these people, because these people don't just want to work for money these days, they want to work for a company where they have a nice office working environment, like a nice working environment. They want to work with a company that like kind of embraces values and things that they want to be a part of, and that's very tricky for some organizations. I mean, it's easy for you to get people to get excited about solving, I don't know, world hunger, but it's very tricky for you to get them invested into, I don't know, selling paper clips. It's how do you make a good employer brand spin on that, right? It's as you can see, it's a very tricky problem. If you look at it that's like from the company perspective. If you look at things from the perspective of working for a startup or working within that environment, you should know that it is very often very chaotic. A lot of the people working in startups are usually very some of them are extremely inexperienced, and especially in management. It's rare-ish that a very small-time startup has any type of meaningful experience within the management team, when most of the things that you do is basically, well, that's what they say, right? You're building your wings as you kind of fall down you jump off a cliff and you're trying to build your wings before you hit the ground, and that's basically what it is about. You try to, like anything that will gain traction, because it's a very chaotic environment and things shift back and forth. You can almost completely forget about, as a software developer, trying to create quality. And the same thing goes for sales. I don't know how many times I've seen people within the startup world trying to oversell a product or overpromise on things, which are, you know, I know for a fact that this is not really it's not really the truth. But they have no other option, because the benefit of being a small company is that you can move faster and like do these sorts of things as opposed to what bigger companies can. So you should be like that. That's one part of it, like experimentation, trying things out and seeing if, like, basically throwing things at the wall and see if something's going to stick. That is a lot of what the work that you do is. And that environment, you should know that it requires a certain level of skill to be able to survive in that environment and be truly happy and productive. I mean, if you get to the right startup, that's great, and they're going to train you and so forth. But you should know that there is a lot of fluctuation, a lot of like ad hoc decisions, and things are moving extremely fast. Like you can be working on one thing day one, and tomorrow someone from the sales teams comes in and says that, hey, we need to completely change this direction. We're going to go in this direction now, and then you start working on that instead. And as a developer, it's very common that, you know, people, like, someone makes a promise. Like, it's such an easy thing to happen when you're in sales, where you just promise something that you're not 100% sure, because you need to promise this to that big whale of a company that you try to sign a deal with. Because if you don't promise them that, they are not going to take they're not going to give you the contract. And then you go and talk to your developers, and hopefully they can solve all those issues. And that is a lot of what this means. So that's why you need these, you need this office culture, because nobody in their right mind would want to work under such circumstances unless they really are committed at like an emotional level to the thing that you are doing, or to the people in that organization. Without that office culture, you can't have that type of dynamic environment, because people will get in your way, or they will second guess you, or they won't get on board. And that's the way it works in large corporations, or some large corporations, where it doesn't matter what top management wants or what direction you want to pull the company in, because you're going to have a shitload of problems just moving people from one direction to another, just steering that massive ship, because you have so many people who have their own agendas. They're either, they're not invested. Like, it's a big office politics type of game to just move that whale of a company around. And that's the thing that is very different in the way that you think in a startup, because in a startup, you focus a lot more on the people that you gather, as opposed to like what exact role they're going to have in the company. You're trying to find a group of passionate people who are going to work extremely well in this dynamic, chaotic ecosystem. And in order for you to get those people, you need to have a good office culture, and you need to go the extra mile as a company. Employer branding is everything. So what I want you to take away from this is that the mindset, or rather the startup mindset, basically comes down to two perspectives. You have it from the company perspective, where in order for you to get that dynamic ecosystem, you will have to let go of some reservations you may have about what a company should provide to their employees. You are going to have to spoil your employees a little bit. I'm sorry to say, that's the only way, because the developers right now, they hold all the cards. Like the ones that are really good. If the people who know their own value, and are truly good at what they do, they will not start working for you just because you offer them money. And you don't want those people, most likely those who only work for you for money, because usually these are not the people who are going to bring you the most value. And that means, as a company, you need to reconsider office culture. You need to consider your office spaces and like what your employer brand signals to everybody else. And trust me, that will matter a lot when you are looking for recruits. It will be a lot easier for you to find new developers in their 20s and their 30s if you have nailed that part down. We can talk about how to do that, but that's a different video. And the second perspective is from the developer, or like the people actually working within that company. The mindset is usually that a lot of experimentation, you're just trying out different things. I mean, you have highly skilled people who are usually generalists of some sort, who can just take in a request, build something, see if like a proof of concept, see if it works. If it works, we ship it, and hopefully it's going to stick and people are going to like it. If that's not the thing, we throw that shit away and we start on the next thing. And that's the chaotic ecosystem. And usually you will find that a lot of startups, the good ones, make false promises, but can deliver on those false promises when things get critical. The bad startups are usually the ones who burn through all of their investor money and makes based on the investor money that they got on a bunch of false promises, but in reality they don't actually have what it takes to deliver on those promises. So it's a very, let's call it a volatile ecosystem. Have a great day.